Jones steps up. Ricketts is at the high point. Jones. Orolatario has a lane. Nicholas Orolatario, the shot. Scores! Holy jumping! The Italian stallion puts the puck in the back of the net. Mamma mia, Nicholas Orolatario! To keep it in and does. Callum Jones for Potts. At the blue line, kept in by the skate of Thomas Maya. Maya. Down low on the half course, he swings out in the slot for Potts. Kyle Potts has it, hangs on, now he shoots, scores! Holy jumping! How do you do? Kyle Potts puts the puck in the back of the net. Blades block that shot, and coming the other way is Alton McDermott. He's in on the breakaway, scores! Holy jumping! His grandfather, Paul Henderson, must be ecstatic about that one because Alton McDermott just scored his first career Buckland Cup final playoff goal. Has been pulled. The Dukes are in the Oakville zone. Zone Selvins swung that around. The Blades are trying to tie this puck up. It goes into the corner. The Blades have a chance to get this out. Lions will tie it up. 10 seconds. Gilmore has it at the point. It's in. 6. Just wide. 7 seconds. It's back in the corner. Ewing's back in. 3, 2, 1. The Oakville Blades. Holy jumping. Blades win. Blades win. Blades win. The Oakville Blades are Buckland Cup champions. You're watching and listening to Mamma Mia. This is Fire Talk with Nicholas Fiore. Welcome back, everybody, to episode number 41 of Mamma Mia. This is Fire Talk. I'm Nicholas Fiore, the host of the show and the Oakville Blades play-by-play broadcaster of the Ontario Junior Hockey League. And joining me on this edition of the show, I have a very special guest, the Detroit Redwings of the NHL play-by-play announcer. A dream job that I want to have one day. But Mr. Ken Daniels, thank you for coming on. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick. Give me some time left, okay, before you take my job.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you a few years.
Okay.
No, it's all good. I really do appreciate you coming on. I know a lot of people in your positions and in your shoes, whether it's players or staff members, let's just say in the big leagues, don't really give a guy like myself who want to get there one day a shot and come on a show like this. So I truly do appreciate you coming on.
Well, Nick, you have to pay it forward. And many did that for me, whether it be just starting out in the biz out of Toronto and giving people, names to me of people that they knew. And I wrote Brian Williams, who the Canadian broadcaster at CBC and then TSN. I wrote him a letter when I was 17 years old, and he wrote me back. And then he called me and said, come on down, watch me do some shows. I did. And then at the age of roughly 25, when I got hired to work CBLT television, Brian went to Network Sports at CBC, and I basically took over his chair locally. And about a year into the job, maybe less than that, kids would call and say, hey, Ken, can I come down and watch you? And I'd say, sure, and give me a call next month. And Bill Lawrence, I shared an office with, he was the weather guy. And Bill said, Ken, what you just said to that young guy on the phone, Brian Williams said to kids all the time, because I sat here and listened. And I said, Bill, I was one of those kids Brian said that to. So you've got to pay it forward is the long story to that.
And absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I've gotten a lot of guests that I didn't think I really would get on this show. And I'm humbled and I appreciate it, of course, because, I went to school for it, graduated radio broadcasting and media foundations at Humber College in Toronto. And I since I was 4 years old, I knew I wanted to be a play-by-play broadcaster in hockey. So it's the slow grind, right? But it's the grind that I think will be more rewarding at the end of the day, hopefully, if I get there. We don't know where the road leads, right? The road is very winding, so you just got to take every opportunity possible. And I'm grateful to be with the Oakville Blades in Junior A in Ontario right now. For yourself, 19 seasons entering, if I read that correctly, with the Detroit Red Wings.
Going this next year will be this coming season will be our 25th season.
25th season. See, yeah. So wherever I read that is wrong. No, the 25th.
Or they haven't updated it.
Exactly. Come on. So 25th season with the Detroit Red Wings coming up in September, of course, hopefully anyways. What has that been like? I mean, starting in Toronto, as well. Going through some minor gigs, obviously compared to the where you are in the NHL, but still very great jobs that you've held. 25 seasons with the Detroit Red Wings. I mean, is it a dream?
It's a dream. It's a dream if you had from age 4. I had from 8, 9, or 10 years old, going to sleep with a transistor radio under my pillow that I still have, listening to Foster Hewitt, or trying to get Dan Kelly, who was my idol, who left us all too early at age 52, I think, listening to Dan call St. Louis Blues hockey in the late 60s and early 70s. So I wanted to do it for a long time, and then work Toronto. Actually, my first ever play-by-play gig was Toronto Maple Leafs radio. Just because they needed somebody, and versatility is key. And I always say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So I'd done some Olympics, I'd done television, I'd done radio for so long. So I thought, I went to sleep listening to so many games as a young kid. It was sort of ingrained in my head, where I say I literally dreamed my job. So working for the Leafs, and then Hockey Night in Canada, and hosting and play-by-play, that when the Detroit job came up, I was working the second round of the playoffs in 97 as the Red Wings were on their way to ending their drought of their first of consecutive Stanley Cups, 96, 97. And I was in Buffalo working the second round, Buffalo, Philadelphia, for Hockey Night. And Dave Strader walked into the booth and said, "Mickey wants you to send your tape in, because the guy who replaced me won't be coming back." And Dave was with ESPN at the time, and he and Mick were doing round 2 of that series for ESPN International. So that's how it happened. I sent my tape in, and months later, I got hired. And just the night before the Red Wings offered me the gig, I had agreed on a handshake deal with John Shannon, the exec producer of Hockey Night in Canada, to stay with them on a 3-year deal. And then this came up, and then I didn't know what to do. When I called John the next day and sought his advice, and he said, "You got to go, because the only way you're going to get better, to be the best you can be, is to do a full season of games. I can offer you 27 weeks, even though they had double headers. I can maybe give you 17 to 20 weeks of that on Saturday nights, and maybe around to the playoffs. But you're going to do 80 games, preseason, playoffs." And that first year, I think I came to Detroit, first or second year, including college hockey, I did 119 games, including preseason, regular season for Red Wings, playoffs for Red Wings. And then I did 19 college games, Michigan State, Ferris State, whoever was playing, Bowling Green. And then you meet a lot of the players that are coming up to the NHL doing college. So it's been very rewarding. And I like to say I haven't worked a day in my life.
Yeah, that's what it's funny. I say the same thing to my parents. They're like, "Well, you're doing all this, you're not getting paid for blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, no, it's not about that. It's because I love it so much that all of this extra stuff that I do on the side with zero income back, it's because I love it, and the passion that I put into it, right? It's not work for me. A part-time job is work. This isn't work.
Right? It's not. And you're right. You use that word passion. It's about passion. If you got the passion, you'll succeed. That's right. In anything. That's right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with being background Italian, there's a lot of passion for me there. That's for sure.
Yeah, tons of it.
Tons, especially during the Euro Cup now anyways. But that's another point. Listen, obviously, you've had hockey around your life for a long time, being in the GTHL as an official and all that. What could you have seen yourself do anything else? I know you dabbled in Blue Jays baseball and Formula One a little bit, but could you see was hockey just really the number one focus from a young age, and obviously working into it now?
Yeah, from a young age, sure. And, they kept all the equipment and sticks at my house because we had a churchyard right across the street. So we'd play ball hockey right after school almost every day. And I even made a stick rack in 8th grade that I still have. And I kept a lot of my collectible sticks that I've gotten through the years. So, yeah, I would think so. From listening to hockey, watching my brothers played, I played, not from an early age, but probably 8, 9, I started on skates. Now they start at 3 and 4. But I always saw myself being a part of it in some way, and watching the likes of Brian Williams and sportscasters, and grew up going to sleep, listening to The World Tonight on CFRB, listening to Dave Hodge do the sports before he was ever at Hockey Night in Canada for the longest time before he got himself canned. But yeah. And Dave was just that voice. I mean, I'd be in bed listening to that falling asleep listening to him do the sports. Not that he put me to sleep. It just was always an ease. So it was always in my mind. So I don't know if play-by-play necessarily. I know I wanted to host Hockey Night in Canada and got that opportunity. I wanted to be around the game. And then, you know, when you're working for CBC, I wound up hosting Blue Jays baseball for 2 years, 92, 93, the World Championship years. But even being around the Maple Leafs, doing daily reports for CBC television, being at Maple Leaf Gardens, dealing with Harold Ballard, I always just felt going to the baseball guys, it was more of a chore. They weren't, you know, they were the big fish and they really didn't care. Hockey players, as long as they were big, but growing up, they just, whether it be around the family atmosphere and in Canada and knew what the game meant, I always just found them to be friendlier, just better folks to be around all the time and to deal with. And I think it just grew my love for being around the game of hockey even more than it was baseball or Indy racing that you had to really delve into and learn. Hockey, I grew up learning. So it was always easier for me. And officiating, I put myself through college, bought my first car, although college back then wasn't what it is today. So it wasn't like I was making tons. But, you know, you're officiating in the Metro Toronto Hockey League, now the GTHL, and you're making $5,000 a year. That's pretty good. As a cash, you know, you're working 17, 18, 19 years old and you're making that in the late 70s. That was pretty good money. And I love being around the rink. I love being on skates. I was a pretty good skater, but I realized I thought about being an official and I never, you know, I was always vertically challenged to some extent. I knew that may not happen. And the skating level that you have to be at to be that good, I was a notch below that. So, and when I was in high school, by the way, my high school hockey coach, played for the high school hockey team, was Mike Keenan. You know, longtime NHL coach, maybe top 10 all time in wins, won the Stanley Cup with the New York Rangers in '94. So Mike was my high school coach before he got to the NHL. So I just always wanted to be around the game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Obviously going to York University as well. Worked in radio, of course, for I don't know how long, but you started with, you know, CBC 1985 to 97, and obviously getting the Red Wings gig, of course, as we mentioned, but you didn't really stay in Toronto. You went to Oshawa, right? CJCL in 1980, covering politics and news, and obviously a little bit of sports, which then that turned into The Fan. But yeah. Was it difficult? Was it difficult for you to do, you know, because it seems like anyway, sports was the main focus, or was it actually politics and news? And how did you really, you know, like the transition? If you didn't like it at all, did you have to do that in order to get back into sports?
Yes. I think versatility, and they knew they could call on me. If a sportscaster was away, they needed someone to read the sports, they could call on Ken. They needed someone to go to City Hall, they could call on me, or Queen's Park. When I started in Oshawa, that was when sorry about that. When I started in Oshawa, and that was my first radio gig, I was working the political beat in Oshawa and Durham County, whether it be Pickering, Ajax, whatever, the whole area. I didn't know what I was doing. You're thrown into it. You go with a tape recorder, and now you got to sit down on city council meetings, and you're actually talking to politicians. So you learned how to make notes. You learned how to do what could be a 3-hour council meeting and condense that with a tape item in there from one of the council members into a 45-second piece. Yeah. So you had to learn how to type. You know what? Typing class I took in 8th grade was the best class I ever took, because boy, did it help later in radio. I just, you know, we weren't, you know, and everything wasn't computer age then. You learned how to type. So going from there, I did some political stuff. I worked overnight news, learned how to get all my mistakes out of the way, at least many of them, doing overnights when few people were listening at CJCL. And then I was City Hall reporter and Queen's Park reporter. I had an office in the Ontario Legislature building and at Queen's Park and at City Hall. I had an office there. So again, a lot of council meetings, but when they needed somebody, versatility is key, then graduated into sports. And then ultimately I stayed there, went to CBC television, got into that full-time, just to sports. And then when CJCL became The Fan in about 1990, I came back to do morning sports then while working TV. So I was working 5 mornings a week, getting up early, doing radio at 5 a.m. And then I'd go home and shower at 10 o'clock. And go host the 6 o'clock sports in CBC. And many nights would do a Leaf game at night, play-by-play, maybe 15 or 20 games a year, starting in 1990, and then get up the next morning and start all over again. But I loved it. And then often I would host CBC Sports Weekend, filling in for Brian Williams on the national side on the weekend. So I was working lots. That explains why I had very few dates back then.
Hey, you know, it's funny too, you know, even in junior hockey here, it's a 54-game season, and 2 years ago, the Oakville Blades in OJHL, we went all the way. and we went to, Cochrane, Ontario for the Dudley Hewitt Cup, which is the Central Canadian tournament, and the national tournament in Brooks, Alberta. And I wasn't around. Like we were traveling and we were going, and the same exact thing, these long seasons, even a 54 game season from September to February, March in junior A, you're not home. Like my friends are like, hey, you want to hang out tonight? You want to go out? I'm like, I'm at the rink Friday, Saturday, and probably Sunday too. So it's that grind. And I can obviously relate to that, but I mean, not even close to, what you've done back in the day, and obviously continue to do so. With you being here, starting your career, in Toronto, of course, and obviously moving now to Michigan, have you checked up on, or have you, let's just say, followed up on any junior hockey, any minor hockey back here in Ontario at all?
Not really. I mean, you hear about players who are up and coming, so maybe you see them, but you get so consumed with the NHL game, and especially this year was so weird. Even though we played fewer games, 56 game season, we maybe did 48 or 50 of them because some lost to national. But even then, you're going to every other night, even though we weren't traveling. So there really isn't. I keep an eye on TSN and Sportsnet via the dish and what's going on. So you hear, but no, I think for me, it's more even following up on college hockey or U of M and players like Matt Beniers and Owen Power, and thinking, Kent Johnson, guys who are at Michigan who maybe are in that range where the Red Wings are going to be picking. So I have a tendency more to follow that. And when the draft rankings come out, maybe pick and choose, but to follow all of it, it just gets to be too much after a while. I just got to concentrate on what I'm doing now.
Absolutely. I can only imagine. I've been following actually University of Michigan, Eric Ciccolini, pretty close as well, obviously from Toronto Junior Canadians here in the OJHL, and I've had him on the show and I've spoken to him several times, obviously, as our paths crossed, and he's obviously in the University of Michigan now, hopefully and drafted as well by the Rangers, right? So that's
if you weren't Italian, would you be following him as closely?
Absolutely. Come on. No. If I didn't know him in the league, then I don't know, but right. No, absolutely. I mean, Eric Ciccolini. I mean, the last name, mine's Fiore, but Ciccolini sounds a little more Italian than mine. That's for sure. Well,
I hope he makes the NHL. I'll come to you for the exact pronunciation. Make sure I get it right. That's the one thing about play-by-play, and I always tell people, and it bothers me now, even when I hear people on the air, and it's it's Alex Pietrangelo. It's not Peterangelo or Petrangelo. It's Pietrangelo, and he's on a commercial on NBC, and he says, "Hi, I'm Alex Pietrangelo," and you got to say the name right. It drives me crazy when people don't get the names right of the players. Go ask them. Now, when I ask the player, he tells me how to do it. I practice it and I do it. And then you get on social media, he's saying his name wrong. No, I went to the player and I asked him. I know exactly how to say his name. So anyway, that drives me crazy. So I'll come to you for the right pronunciation.
If there's any Italian Americans, Italian Canadians, or just Italians in general in the league, you come to me. I got it. My grandmother, my nonna, taught me all the pronunciation, so we're good. But I do the same thing. I mean, sometimes I go to the coaches of the Oakville Blades. I'm like, how do you pronounce this guy's name? Because it's a little weird. I started with the Brampton Bombers in the GOJHL Junior B, and there was one guy, it was like Zivojevic, and it's like, is the J silent? Is it not? So I go to the coach. They didn't even know, so I went to the player directly, because you can't say, as a play-by-play announcer, in my opinion, I think you'd agree, you can't say a player, a staff member, any guy's last name, first name wrong on the air, because it's not a good view. It's not a good image. It's not a good listen, right? You got to get the stuff right. And that's where the preparation and the hard work comes in, because you don't want the player's name wrong. That's for sure.
For sure not. And, even the likes of like John, they say John Tavares. I know when he's on the island because I went and asked him. And I know, Uncle John and lacrosse in the background, and part of the family says it one way, part says the other way. And then the player says, I don't care, and they go that way. I know he was John Tavares. I know he was. And I'm on the road watching after he came to Toronto, and there was still a commercial running on MSG Network, and it said, hi, I'm John Tavares. And everybody in Toronto, Tavares. And I hear him say it's John Tavares. I'm listening to him say his name. Yeah. And when I hear Alex Pietrangelo, I know it's Pietrangelo. It's not Petrangelo when people say it. So, yeah, you've got to get it right. And I'll go to the player. Here's a tip for you. Never ask the coaches. The coaches don't have a clue how to say his name, because even on our team, it's Philip Hronek, and they'll still call him Hronek. And it's like Jeremy Hronek, it's Philip Hronek. We ask, it's Hronek. And then you get the Tatars, and we had Thomas Nosek, who wanted Tomash, and then Thomas Tatar wanted Tomash Tatar, and they all wanted Tomash. And then Yurko, I'll never forget the day we're in Nashville, and then Thomas Yurko walks over, and he says, wait a minute, if he's Tomash and he's Tomash, I want to be Tomash. And I said, you haven't played long enough to tell me whatever to call you. So you have to wait your turn. So anyway, that's how it winds up. And now we told the story on the air. Now everybody wants to be Tomash Tatar, because they liked it better. Because Tats loved when I said his name, Tatar. So, you know, you want to go to the player if you can. And what's neat is a lot of college hockey now and the NHL, they'll do audio. And if you go on the audio files in the National Hockey League and you click on the audio and you actually hear the player say his name. And to me, that's important. We may screw it up. I may get it wrong sometimes in the air or mess it up, but I know it'll happen once and then I'll get it right. And you want to be sure about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Obviously, you've had some experiences in your life, in your career, and Hockey Night in Canada, from what I've been getting from this conversation and in general, was a pretty big, experience and life experience and job experience for you. Was that kind of your like, pre-beginning job, dream job type of thing? Like, I want to be on Hockey Night Canada. You said you wanted to be the host, and it kind of was. But the overall experience, did you expect it any other way?
No, it was as nerve-wracking as I ever imagined it to be. And it was a great experience. And thank goodness I was on before the era of social media. I'm not sure would have handled that as well. So it was nice, 1990, and my first foray into Hockey Night, I had called some Leaf play-by-play, and again, I was on TV, so it would have been 1990, and the first round of the playoffs, the Leafs and St. Louis Blues, and Ron MacLean was hosting. I was in St. Louis for local television, filing reports back on the first round series, the Leafs and the Blues, and Ron MacLean had to go home for a family emergency. So again, cell phones were not really prevalent then, and I came back to my hotel room that night for the game, before game one in St. Louis at the old arena. And Mark Askin, the producer for Hockey Night, called my room and said, hey, Ken, I hear you're down here. Can you host Hockey Night in Canada for us? And I'd already done national sports for CBC. So it wasn't out of the realm that they'd asked me, can you host? Ron MacLean's left his jacket. We'll button up, we'll tie up the sleeves a little bit because Ron was bigger than me. And we got the blue jacket for you. And can you host Hockey Night? So there I was. I wished I'd seen the light at 6:30 in the morning because I didn't sleep at all that night. And there I was the next day hosting, including with Don Cherry on Coach's Corner. So once you get through that in life, you can probably get through anything. But I'll tell you the one quick story of that day, as nervous as I was, and we taped back then, it went across the different regions, whether it be to Winnipeg or Edmonton, wherever the game was going. We taped Coach's Corner at 4:00 in the afternoon. So it was Don's predictions for the first round of the entire Stanley Cup playoffs. We tape it at 4:30. It goes okay. I'm nervous, filling in for Ron MacLean. I do it with Don. Then we're watching game one of the Leafs and Blues in the green room there, watching the first period. And Don says, this isn't going like I thought it would. This isn't going well. Leafs didn't come out like I thought they would. I'm wrong. We're going to have to do Ontario region. We're going to have to do this live. I said, live? You want to do Coach's Corner for Toronto, St. Louis region, Ontario, live? He goes, don't worry, I was great the first time. I'll be great the next. So he didn't give a crap about me. So anyway, we did Ontario live. But again, I got through it. Looking back at the tapes now, as nervous as I could be. And I had, the bad mustache I had back in the day. But at any rate, with Coach's Corner, I wound up doing quite a few with Don Cherry. The Albertville Olympics, Ron was gone for a month. I was supposed to do ski jumping for CBC. And they said, do you want to do ski jumping at the Olympics? Go to Albertville, or do you want to stay and host a month of Hockey Night in Canada in Coach's Corner with Don? I'll stay. So the Olympics were out, and I got to host a month with Don. So I had done a lot of that. So really getting thrown into that way, and then into play-by-play after I'd already started with the Leafs doing play-by-play. It was a great training ground for me to then jump into play-by-play for Hockey Night. So yes, it was everything I thought it would be. You're standing there on the bench and you're ready to go. And that great theme music, which is now at TSN, and I miss it on Hockey Night. I wish it was still there, but it's on TSN and they use it. When Dolores Claman's theme comes up and you hear the Hockey Night theme and you're ready to go live with what you spent most of the afternoon on, and welcome to the Montreal Forum or wherever you are, your heart's pounding out of your chest. Nothing better.
Oh, I wish one day. That's why I had to ask the question, because it's one of those things where, growing up, it's like, oh, that anthem, right? That theme song
Yeah.
keeps getting and coming in. Hopefully one day for sure. You've done, as mentioned, a lot of sports, right? Blue Jays and Formula One, and then some Olympics, the 1988 Summer Olympics in Seoul, 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. How was it overall, going from Formula One, baseball, hockey, then several sports in the Olympics? Did you like it? And how was the overall experience, doing Olympic Games?
Well, it's a lot of studying doing the Olympics because I was doing some baseball off a monitor, and then you're doing canoeing, kayaking, which I knew nothing about. You're doing the road race, the velodrome. So you learn to do it. And I also done some world championships for CBC. So, when you're doing it for sports weekend before the Olympics, you're just engrossed in it. You're just watching tapes from previous years, seeing how other guys called it, seeing how Don Whitman called it, velodrome racing, learning all about it, going to do features for CBC, getting to know the participants. So that's really what it is. It's just learning. You're going to school, learning sports you knew nothing about. The funny story there was, there were two. One, they sent me to do tennis. Chris Everett, because tennis in '88 made its debut in the Olympics. I watch tennis, but you don't really know much about tennis. And they said, you'll call, we'll come to you for live reports about the tennis match. Chris Everett's playing an Italian girl. Her last name may have been Ciccolini. I can't remember for sure, but it was Italian girl, Chris Everett's first match in the '88 Seoul Olympics. And they weren't coming to me till probably the second set. So it's not what you know, it's whom you know to sit behind. I took my perch right behind Bud Collins. Yeah. We moved all our stuff over. Bud was working for NBC, calling the Olympics. And I sat right behind Bud Collins, took down all the notes that he had said, because I heard him just talking to his broadcast partner on the air. And I just wrote them down. So when CBC came to me, I could update. I'd heard Bud talk about it, sort of knew how to play it off. And that's really what I did. So it's knowing who to sit beside. And the other one would have been having to go and call judo. And Bob Moyer, who is exec producer of CBC, said, what do you know about judo? As I'm in the CBC broadcast center on an off night. And I said, nothing. He goes, well, Canada's in the gold medal match. I need you to go to the judo hall and call judo. I had no idea about judo, where to go, what to do. He said, and I'm reading up about judo, realizing that ippon is the term for a pin. If you pin in the right way, the match is over. That's as much as I knew about judo. He said, when you get there, find an analyst who can come on with you. So I found German TV had nobody in that championship match. So I get the German guy and I said, can you do me a favor? Can you call it with me for English TV? His English was great. He said, sure, no problem. I said, look, I'm not going to be able to tell if a guy pins a guy in a certain way for the match is being over. So do me a favor. If he pins him and it's an ippon, just hit me and go, Ken, he's done it. So sure enough, he did. And he said, Ken, he's done it. And I said, ippon, the match is over. Gold medal, whatever it was at the time. So you just learn to fake it. Once you learn how to fake it, you got it made in this business. So you didn't know. And when I went back to the studio, Bob Moyer said to me, boy, for a guy who knew nothing about judo, you sure got that done. And that meant a lot to me. So to your point, when you go through things like that and Olympic Games and learning experiences, you feel you can do anything and you know you can get through it, as nerve-wracking as it is at the time. But that's the challenge. That's what we love. Yeah. We love a challenge. That's why we're in it. That's why you're doing what you do and you want to take a next step. That's what it's about. Doing the Olympics and games you don't know, doing the games you know can only be easier, but you still prepare the same.
I don't know if it's a good thing to say, but you got to fake it to make it, they say, right?
You do. Once you've got, I can't remember whether it wasn't Hemingway. I got to remember the author. It was something like, once you've got sincerity faked, you've got it made. And that's what it's about. Once you can learn to fake sincerity, you got it made. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Oh God, I got to take that advice. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Moving on, you also have a book with a couple others, Bob Duff, Mickey Redmond. If These Walls Could Talk, Detroit Redwings.
Yeah.
Released in October 2021. October 17, sorry. And you had, this book's obviously something. Was it something that you thought about, that you wanted to do, that you wanted to be a part of, and the overall process for you?
No, it wasn't something I ever thought about. And then one night at Joe Louis Arena, Bob Duff came to me and said, they asked me, Triumph Publishing out of Chicago, asked me to help with a book. Do you want to write a book about the Red Wings and about your life in broadcasting? I said, well, if it's not just about the Red Wings, and it is about my life in broadcasting, and tell people, because I read books about the life in broadcasting growing up and what it's like for people and those stories and how, like yourself, how do you get into the business? So I said, if it can be part of that, sure. So I said, okay. And that would have probably been 2016, early in 2016. And my son, Jamie, had said to me at the time, why don't you wait until you're 80 and then you can rip on all the people and you won't really care anymore. You can tell really good stories. And I thought, well, that might be true. Maybe there's another one there, but right now I don't think that's the point. So we started writing that book probably in September of 16. And my son passed away in December. And obviously, the introduction was to my son, but I stopped writing for about 3 months. Now you've got an April deadline going on. So March, I went down to Florida. We had a break and I wrote for about 5 days straight. I did most of the writing and wrote some with Bob Duff, who did a lot of the Red Wing stories, and Through My Eyes, he wrote those, and the rest of it were by me. So yeah, and then we got it done by April, and it came out in after Jamie had passed. So it came out in September of 17. And I really didn't talk much about my son's passing due to a substance use disorder when he got patient brokered in Florida by the greed of the recovery industry. And I didn't really talk much about it. People knew, but Jamie passed in December of 16. And then in September of 17, Craig Custance from the Athletic Subscription Pay Service called to talk about the book, If These Walls Could Talk, and then said, how you doing? And I often say, it wasn't like Joey from Friends, how you doing? It was, how you doing? And there was a voice in the back of my head, and it was my son saying, Dad, it's okay. So I told him Jamie's story. And then he said, holy shit, we have to write about this. And he did. And then ESPN E60 called. They did a 30-minute doc on Jamie's life. Then within a year, we started the Jamie Daniels Foundation to combat substance use disorder. We're building long-term recovery housing here in Oakland County, Michigan, in his name. And through that time, in just over 2 years since JamieDanielsFoundation.org, our foundation started, we've raised more than $1 million. So all of that probably would have happened, but really the book, If These Walls Could Talk, as much as it was nice to write my story, Craig Custance from The Athletic talking to me because of the book brought about everything that's happened since, and it keeps my son alive. So it's wonderful to us.
And it's funny because I think we might have the same job, because my next question was about the Jamie Daniels Foundation. And obviously, as much as you want to touch upon it, of course, I know it's been a few years now, but what's the main focus of the Jamie Daniels Foundation? As I think you really just kind of said it, but main focus and what you want to reach, who you want to reach, and what you want to reach out to people with.
We're reaching out to people with the thought that the shame and stigma precludes recovery. And we didn't talk about it for 9 months. We really didn't. I mean, my family didn't know when Jamie was in recovery. My son was in Florida in recovery, went from Michigan to Florida, safe place for 7 months. He was sober. He was studying for his LSATs. He was working at a law firm as a clerk. So he was, it was $245 a week to stay where he stayed. And then he got patient brokered by a kid who got paid to get Jamie to come to a different house, met him at a 12-step program. They get paid to bring to a different house because that house, it's anything but sober. Back then, anyone could open up a recovery home. We've since spoken before Congress to get that changed, and laws are changing. Anyone could open a recovery home. That recovery home, for cheap rent, $50 a month, they get a kickback from the doctors to whom they send that kid to. The doctor's job really, I think, is to get them to relapse again. The doctor who saw Jamie put him on Xanax for his anxiety. No addiction doctor, knowing a kid's been addicted, puts a kid on Xanax. You just don't. And then they send out unnecessary lab work. And the labs bilk the insurance industry. And one of Jamie's doctors, Dr. Michael Ligotti, and Jamie's is one of 5 indictments against Dr. Ligotti. He'll stand trial in May of 22 for bilking the insurance industry of $681 million. And that last house that Jamie stayed at, Kenneth Chapman, one of the owners of Journey to Recovery, is serving 27 years in federal prison. So Jamie got caught up in a scheme, which is still prevalent in the United States, but ending, hopefully. So that's what we're doing. We're talking about it because, as I say, Nick, anything below the shoulders, cancer, anything that happens to anyone, we have a tendency to talk about it. But mental wellness, anything above the shoulder, we don't. And we need to. And I like to call it brain wellness. Let's not use mental illness if we can, brain wellness. And what's happening, patient brokering in the industry, is happening in Canada too. And I know Vancouver has huge issues with opioid abuse or substance use disorder, whatever you want to call it. We tell people that addicts don't wind up one day just saying, hey, I want to be an addict today. No different than someone who's addicted to alcohol. You have a drink, but the chemical receptors in your brains change and everyone's different. And Jamie was turned on to opioids in his freshman year at Michigan State University, of which there is now the Jamie Daniels Memorial Scholarship. We give a grant to Michigan State to pay for a full-time recovery coach and a floor of a dorm that is drug-free, sobriety for those kids in sobriety. Those kids who have to go to recovery come back. We help offset the costs. We're now going into Central Michigan, we believe Ferris State, and we're building long-term safe recovery housing here in Oakland County. So that's where the money that we have raised so far is going to. So our mission, long-winded answer to your question, is we need people to talk about it. They don't want to be addicts, but anyone who is addicted knows that if you're going through detox and you want to get off it, the Reagans from the 80s who said, just say no to drugs. Once you're addicted, you can't say no because your brain says, if you don't take another pill, you're going to get so sick, you have no idea. And the brain says, give me. And you've got no control over that. And you continue to use so you don't get sick. That's why a detox, intensive detox in hospital for 30 days is so important. And that's just step one of a million steps for the rest of your life. And so many relapse, so few make it. So we need empathy, not judgment. Empathy is the highest form of knowledge because it comes without judgment. And if it's not happening in your house, and I hope it isn't, it's likely happening 2 or 3 doors down because 2.5 million Americans are addicted. So that's.
Yeah, and that's like, from here, being from here, like I wouldn't know that, right? I wouldn't know that story, you hear a lot of, on CP24 here in Ontario, right? You'll hear tons of news all over the world, not just in Canada, in Ontario. You hear obviously stuff that happens in the States, but it's the major stuff, unfortunately, that you hear, and not always these other smaller things. That there's a big issue right here that you said, which I do appreciate, and thank you for opening up about it. I wouldn't know that, right? And it's something that we all should really know about, or at least have an idea or sense about what is going on, because stuff is happening all over the world. And something like that, unfortunately, your son, getting caught up in something that he didn't want to get caught up in, and that he wasn't looking to get caught up in. It's just, and I'm happy these people are finally getting the justice, if I can say that.
You can say that. I hope so. And you know what? And the other thing is, hockey players, and you're around them, and junior hockey players, and the doctors may prescribe an opioid for the pain.
Yeah.
Best be careful. And it's happening too often. Or shoulder surgery, knee surgery. The kids are on oxycodone, Percocet, whatever they're taking after, or sleeping pills where you can't sleep, or you've got schoolwork to do, and you've got practice the next day, and you're taking something. For Jamie, we believe it started on Adderall. He told us later, when he was sober and in recovery for those 7 months, he told us he faked the test to the doctor to get the Adderall, because he, although he was bright, graduated from Michigan State with a 3.5, he was smart enough, but he thought he was stupid, thought he had test anxiety, and faked it with the doctor. Yeah. He was smart enough to do that, to get Adderall. And then what happens, you wind up in college, you become addicted to opioids, you start selling the Adderall for the more expensive opioid. Bottom line, what happened to Jamie, and I'm not saying he should have known in Florida, even the house he was in, even though I begged him not to go, he should have known to take nothing. But when the doctors put you on Xanax and you're feeling better about yourself, and some guy in the house gives you a pill, you don't know that pill has now been laced with fentanyl. And fentanyl will kill you. A speck will shock your heart. And that's what happened to my son. And when he laid in that bed, in that house that was put up just for the greed to bilk the insurance industry, they let him be there for an hour before they called paramedics, because they cleaned up the house of the drugs. And by then he was gone. So that's what happens. Best beware. And if a doctor prescribes you anything, any type of opioids, if ibuprofen or Tylenol 3 might work better, you have any sports injury, or any of the kids out there who might be listening to this, and parents who might be listening, and you've had a shoulder surgery or back surgery from 4 years ago, and you've got opioids sitting in your medicine cabinet where the kids can find them, get rid of them. Don't flush them down the toilet, because that doesn't help our system. Get rid of them, turn them into police stations. It's not against the law to have them. A doctor prescribed them, and now the doctors are prescribing a lot less. But don't leave them sitting. You wouldn't leave a loaded gun in your house? Trust me, because I've lived it. Opioids are a loaded gun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you can't agree with you more, right? I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, I tore my ACL, my left knee, 2014, 7.5 years ago, January. I had surgery, and they gave me painkillers. They gave me oxys, right, to, do the pain. Yep. And I literally think I took one or two right at the first day or the second day, just because. But then, we got rid of them after, because I didn't need them. And, we didn't get, I didn't get no addicted. There's nothing, but some kids or some people might, and right. The entire bottle in 2 months because the pain, but just mental. It's maybe the mentality too, right? Oh, I need to take this in order to feel better, but you don't. You don't. Right. There's other ways. And when people tell me these stories, I've had a few former NHLers on. Jim Thompson was one of them. Played for the LA Kings, played with Wayne Gretzky, of course, and a few other teams. And he spoke about this, right? And spoke about addiction and all that stuff. And it's a tough thing, but there's other avenues that you can go. And we don't know. We don't know the mental state of everyone. And I don't know personally, my family, we don't know that, but I hear stories like this and I understand, because it's easy to understand if you have your eyes, your ears, and your head, open to understanding. Right. So I hope everyone watching and listening, can take this, that, there's other avenues and there's other ways, to combat, stuff like this, of course.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you opening up about it. Moving gears, just a couple more things I want to touch upon. I know someone who used to work for the Flint Firebirds in the OHL, their media and play-by-play broadcaster, Dominic Hennig, who's the director of strategic communications and brand advancement now for the CCHA, the Central Collegiate Hockey Association, if people don't know. And you've had a connection with the CCHA as well throughout the years. Talk about that connection and how important that association is.
Well, Dom's a great guy, and I love doing college games because, again, you get to know the players as they're coming along, and Max Pacioretty, and I just, there's so many, too many to mention. Even Ryan Kessler at Ohio State. It's like all the guys, you're calling their games, and I hope for them, if they have the Red Wing guys coming in, or was on Fox Sports Detroit, now Bally Sports, it's cool for them to get that exposure. And it was cool for us to get to know them and hear this guy's a top pick, or this guy's already been picked. So you go down to the room and you talk to them before. I wish I'd met more of those players. And I go, yeah, he was there when I was there. Damn, I wish I would have met him. Because then you walk into the dressing room and they'll say, hey, Ken, and they know you, and it makes your job easier down the road. So I love the connection. And, sometimes I would get criticized during a Red Wing game, or I'd say, where he went to college, or if he went to Ferris State or Bowling Green or wherever they went. To me, it was very important to have that. And I think the schools loved it. And I would have the late, great Ron Mason telling me, or Rick Comley, or Red Berenson tell me, we love that because it helps the schools and it helps the profile of the school. With Mel Pearson thinking the same thing now at Michigan. So I always loved the connection. The people were so great to deal with because they wanted that exposure. So I tried to help them with that exposure, calling Red Wing games and mentioning the school alliance. I think it's important, not just to pump the school, but to let kids know who maybe were thinking of going to the Ontario Hockey League, maybe thinking of going anywhere. That's fine. But if you want an education, this guy came from there. Oh yeah, I'm thinking of that school. Well, he came from there. See, you can make it. So that's what it was about. So I think publicizing the league was great. And I'm glad that the CCHA brand is still alive. I guess it was Bowling Green or whatever, I think, who kept the name or the rights. And there we are again. So it's great.
Absolutely. I think you're clearly doing something right, Ken, because you have an award in the cabinet, the Ty Tyson Award of Excellence in Sports Broadcasting from DSM. If people don't know what that is or what it's for, do you mind telling them?
Well, Ty Tyson was a legendary broadcaster here in Detroit, so they give out the Ty Tyson Award. It's voted on. I was very fortunate to win it once, so it's a great local award. So, people like you, and I always say that's good. And I don't, you keep the people like you in one hand, keep the people that don't in the other, and don't shake on that. Just keep them apart. So that was nice. And other awards are just voted on, whether it be by local newspapers or national awards for Michigan, or Emmy awards. That picture you have behind you right there, we're calling the games from between the benches, and that was really cool. And an Emmy award for that. I was the first American broadcaster, although some say Fred Cusick did it many years ago for the Bruins. But Boston at the Old Garden, they were so down low, it was almost like they were in between the benches anyway. But to do play-by-play, and Chris Cuthbert called a game for TSN a few weeks up in Canada before I did in the United States. And that would have been back in 06, I think, Ottawa, Detroit, calling a game then. And then another game later I did against Nashville Predators, Red Wings and Predators. So that was really cool, being down there and being honored for that. Not only, I think to me, that meant as much winning the Emmy for that, because not only was I calling the game from between the benches and you're doing play-by-play, I was also doing interviews. So you'd get the two coaches, you hop over and get the respective coaches on their benches, interview players at a timeout, one or two, maybe one for each team. But I also did what was called the Kenny Cam, and they gave me a camera, and they would take my opening face off, and I'd actually be zooming into the corner, and they go to my shot from that angle between the benches. So I was doing play-by-play, I was doing interviews, and I was doing the camera. The hell, they had to give me an Emmy for that. It was like 3 things. I may not have been good at any of them, but they had to give me an Emmy just for trying. So that was cool too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Finally, Ken, as I say, a few times here, like a broken record, I appreciate you coming on. Means a lot. But advice for maybe, for any broadcaster, that's in university or college wanting to come up, or me who's graduated and doing what I want to specifically do, which is amazing, but trying to get to the next level. What's the best advice you can give me?
Well, you keep practicing and getting great at your craft is what you do. And what you're doing, if you have a passion, you find your way. Just because one door closes, another one may open, and it's persistence. I like to say in this business, I've lived my life by the 3 Ps, persistence, preparation, and passion. Although as I get older, I find the 3 Ps happen more frequently between midnight and 5 a.m., but you'll get there one day when that happens. But I do. And if you have the passion and, the preparation, everything you do, as I mentioned, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So one day you're going to meet somebody just like I did. I ran into Don Martin because I had no food. I went down to a Blue Jays game in 1985, ran into Don Martin. I was doing radio, and he said, "We need a summer fill-in. I'm going to the Canada Summer Games. CBC needs a fill-in. Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Well, hell yeah." And he said, "Call Howard Bernstein, the executive producer, on Monday." I did. They auditioned me. That was my foray into television. Crap happens. I'm very fortunate. But you could say you were lucky. Yeah, right place, right time. I was lucky I needed food that night and I didn't have anything at home. So I went down and grabbed the meal at the Blue Jay game in the press box for media. Yeah, I guess. But luck is when preparation meets opportunity, to my point, that if I hadn't done everything to that point to be prepared, and roughly at that point, 1985, so not a long time, but still 6 years of radio, right, to get into TV. So I had prepared, didn't know much about television, but willing to learn, and preparing from age 17, watching Brian Williams, thinking I could do that. So all those years, your preparation meets the opportunity. When it's there, you're able to seize it. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. The opportunity can be there, but if you haven't prepared and you're not ready, you're just not ready. It wasn't the right time. So that's when, your timing is everything. Sure it is, if you're prepared to be there. So everything someone does, like yourself, even if you're at home and you want to be a broadcaster and you're a teenager and you're reading books out loud, or you go on your computer and you take a story and say, I want to do this on the radio, listen to radio news, listen to the newscast, see how I can get this 1 minute story out of a newspaper. Can you condense that now to 20 seconds worth of written copy? Can you get that gist of that story into 20 seconds? Do you know how to ask a question in 8 seconds or under? Have you prepared enough to do that? To me, that's what it is about broadcasting. And then you call people, maybe you go to broadcast school, whatever you need to do, and get an internship. have the passion, ask questions, be showing people you're willing to learn, and be a good teammate. So it's all about that. And if you have a passion, it'll come.
Absolutely. And that's one thing people tell me is the passion is there. So I'm like, yeah, passion's there, but hey, time's ticking. What's going on? But I'm only
How old are you?
I'm turning 26. I'm turning 26.
Oh my goodness. I mean, yeah, I didn't start. I got in the business out of York University. So sure, I was 21, 22. Yeah. You know what? I wish, and this is my wish for you, take it all in every day and enjoy the process. I know coaches use that a lot. You know, how do you get your team winning? Well, it's a process. You know what? So is life. Yeah. So take it in every day, and it can be too short. And there are many days now, you know, traveling, and I probably should have flown home a day earlier. Do I wish I could have those days back with my kid? Sure. I have my daughter Arlen now, and you know, we FaceTime lots, and you got to make the most of that. And she's in nursing school at Loyola in Chicago, wants to get into substance use down the road. Help honor her brother and work with us, and that'll be great if that happens. But every moment, and you're at 26, that's just when I started into TV. Was I fortunate? Sure, different time, but that doesn't mean you couldn't in 2 years. So enjoy every step you get along the way to getting there. Don't rush it.
Absolutely. And that's what, you know, people are telling me too, especially, you know, my mom said, just take your time. Don't worry. It's going to come as long as you keep on working and talking to people and doing what you love. It's going to take time. I mean, 2 years ago, yes, it was junior A hockey, but we won a championship. And, you know, I got my first championship ring thanks to the Oakville Blades. Shout out to the Oakville Blades who, you know, got it for me. And it's, you know, a little things here and there that you got to take advantage of. Yes. Do I want to be, you know, as professional broadcaster right now? Oh, who doesn't, right? It's been my dream. I was calling Matt Sundin, Gary Roberts, Alexander McGillney for the Leafs on my sister's toy ice cream cone back in the day, or the shower head of her doll set, right? Back in the day. But, and, you know, a grade 2 family tree project. What do you want to be when you grow up? Sports commentator, right? But it's all of, you know, all of this. And I'm so humbled that, you know, yourself and so many others. I've spoken to 9 former NHL players, 1 current one with the LA Kings and Ontario Reign, Matt Luff, and all these guys are coming on and just helping me out and giving me an opportunity to speak to them and to speak to yourself. I mean, play-by-play guys, you know, Chris Cuthbert and Gord Miller and Bob Cole, and yourself and my idol, you know, Joe Bowen. I mean, I spoke to him for a school project 3-4 years ago, and hopefully going to speak to him on this show again. And just you guys giving me an opportunity, and not just, you know, because the position or stance, like I said at the top of the show, that you're in, say, yeah, you know, I'm busy, maybe we'll see. No, like, you know, yes, why not? You know, I have some time. Let's get it done. And I really do appreciate it, Ken. I really do.
Well, thank you. And Joe Bowen, actually, that was what, like, you know, Joe went to Global TV at the time, and that's when I filled in for him on the radio and did, you know, 1 game. And the next year they hired me for 15, and then another 15, then 20. And then John Shannon knew me from radio days. He came to Hockey Night, said, I want to move you from hosting into TV play-by-play, but you got to leave radio because there's too many bad habits, meaning that you don't want to be too descriptive on TV. There are moving pictures. So actually it was, filling in for Joe Bowen was my first foray into hockey play-by-play.
Absolutely. Joe Bowen, my number 1 idol, but don't worry, Ken, not because I'm talking to you. You're on my list. You're on the list.
No. Thank you. I need to be on that list. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely, Ken. Listen, hey, whenever the time's up, or if there's any job openings, you know who to ask. Even though time.
Let's see. I'll be calling you in 2041. How's that?
2040. Whew. No, I might have I might give my parents grandkids by then. No.
Maybe you'll have to leave another team though to come to Detroit by then. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I like I said, I appreciate you coming on. It means a lot. And thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Nick.
All right, everyone. Listen, that was episode number 41, and a fantastic episode at that. I can't believe we're over 40 episodes already. We're on our way to 50, and it's only going to get bigger and better. I got Mamma Mia, This Is Fire Talk merchandise, hats, t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeves, www.mamamia thisisfiretalk.com. I hope everybody, you enjoy your summer. We're going to have episodes coming out very quickly, hopefully weekly in the next couple of months, with a lot of professional players from hockey, soccer, and basketball, and who knows, maybe some more. Listen, everyone, thank you very much. I appreciate you tuning in once again. This is Ken Daniels, play-by-play announcer for the Detroit Red Wings of the NHL. Stay safe out there, and Mamma Mia. Now Davis takes it. and looks to come the other way. Davis is in, trying to drive, and he will look to go across. Good play to Davis, though, to get it right back to him. He goes down low to Israels. Centering, it's there! Scores! Stevie! Steven Whittle scores his first OJHL playoff goal for the Oakville Blades. This game is opening up in a big way for both teams. Ricketts centering, what a pass, Israel's breakaway, the move, scores! What a goal for the Alaska Fairbanks commit, the assistant captain, Harrison Israels, with an absolute dandy. Down low to Lyons, Jack Lyons centering, scores! The double jacks combine as that puck popped up like a jack in a box, and it's Jack Ricketts from Jack Lyons. 6-1 on the 40th shot of the game. It's all Oakville.
Colette Smith hits it in. A chance here can develop, but the Blades will look to take it. And Ricketts finds Israels. Breakaway, Israels. A chance, backhand. Rebound. Scores! And the Oakville Blades win it here in Toronto. Blades win, Blades win, Blades win.
That was Mamma Mia. This is Fire Talk with Nicholas Fiore. Thank you for watching and listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.